The big mistake everyone makes when healing their inner child. Carl Jung. Have you ever tried to heal your inner child, but somehow nothing really changes? You read the books, you repeat the affirmations, you try to meditate, you visualize, you journal. And yet, the anxiety, the emptiness, the painful patterns, they all come back. Here's the truth no one tells you. There's one crucial mistake almost everyone makes when trying to heal their inner child. Hard mistake that's not your fault, because it was never taught. And unless you fix it, no amount of therapy, meditation, shadow work, or self-help will ever set you free. Carl Jung warned about this. Because healing is not about fixing the wounded child. It's about becoming the loving, conscious adult that the child never had. And in the next few minutes, you'll learn exactly what that mistake is, why it secretly keeps you trapped in the same cycles, and how to finally break free, for real. This isn't a motivational talk, this is psychology. This is science, this is healing at the deepest level. So stay with me until the end, because what you're about to understand could save you from wasting years, stuck in survival mode, thinking you're healing, when you're actually abandoning yourself all over again. Ready? Let's begin. Like every healing journey, it starts with confusion. You try everything. Inner child meditations, journal prompts, affirmations, breath work, therapy, shadow work. And still, the same emptiness returns, the same anxious thoughts, the same patterns of chasing love, and then pushing it away, of overgiving, and then collapsing into exhaustion. And deep down, a question starts to rise, one that you're almost afraid to ask. Why isn't this working? Why do I still feel broken when I've tried so hard to heal? No one tells you this, but this confusion is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that something has been missing from the way you've been taught to heal. Carl Jung said it clearly, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And the unconscious is not just a collection of memories. It's not just old pain. It's the invisible programming that runs your life. It's the parts of you that you disconnected from in order to survive. And here's where almost everyone makes the same mistake. They try to heal the inner child by focusing on the child, by fixing the pain, by soothing the wounds, by endlessly digging through the past. But healing doesn't happen by rescuing the child over and over again. Healing happens when you finally become the adult that child never had, the version of you geese who knows how to listen, who knows how to protect, who knows how to hold boundaries, who knows how to say, I hear you, I see you, and I will never abandon you again. But most people don't do that. They try to use the same old strategies that kept them safe as a child, people-pleasing, avoiding discomfort, numbing, seeking validation, thinking that if they just heal perfectly, then the pain will stop. Then they'll finally feel safe. But that's not healing, that's survival as wearing a spiritual mask. And if no one has ever told you this before, let me be the first. The inner child doesn't need you to fix them. They need you to stop abandoning yourself. They need you to become the version of you who no longer betrays your own truth. And that is where everything begins to change. In the next few minutes, you'll understand exactly why this is the mistake that keeps you stuck. And more importantly, how to finally break free. This one is the missing piece no one talks about. The real work, the real healing, the real homecoming. Ready? Let's go deeper. Let's get brutally honest. Right now, most people who start the journey of healing their inner child are unknowingly trying to heal themselves with the same strategies that caused the wound in the first place. Read that again. It's not a mistake of intention. It's a mistake of conditioning. Because when you grow up in an environment where love was conditional, where emotions were dismissed, where boundaries were punished instead of respected, your nervous system learns one thing above all else. I am safe, only when I abandon myself. So what does that look like as an adult trying to heal? It looks like perfectionism, disguised as healing. It looks like obsessively consuming self-help content, desperately trying to fix yourself, as if your pain means you're broken. It looks like doing inner child meditations over and over, not to connect, but to get rid of the parts of yourself you secretly believe are unlovable. It looks like asking questions like, how do I stop being so sensitive? How do I stop overthinking? How do I stop needing so much? But here's the thing, that your sensitivity was never the problem. Your needs were never the problem. Your emotions were never the problem. The problem was that no one ever taught you how to hold them, how to protect them, how to honor them. So what happens? You turn your healing into a new form of self-abandonment. You turn growth into another performance. You turn self-love into a transaction. If I heal perfectly, then I will be worthy. If I stop having triggers, then I will deserve love. If I become better, then I can finally rest. This is the wound, wearing a mask. It's still the same survival pattern, just wrapped in spiritual language. Carl Jung warned us about this. The greatest tragedy, he said, is not the wound itself, but what we had to abandon within ourselves to survive it. And this is exactly where most healing journeys go wrong, because the real work, the work that changes everything, isn't about fixing the inner child. It's about becoming the adult that child never had, the version of you who doesn't flinch when emotions get big, the version who doesn't betray yourself just to keep the peace, the version who knows that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival, the version who knows that rest isn't laziness, it's medicine, the version who knows that the presence of pain doesn't mean failure. It means you're finally feeling what had to be suppressed to survive. And here's the heartbreaking truth. When you were a child, abandoning yourself wasn't a choice. It was a survival strategy. If being angry meant losing love, you learned to stay quiet. If being sad meant being shamed, you learned to smile. If having needs meant being a burden, you learned to take care of everyone else at the cost of yourself. And for a child, that was genius. It kept you safe, it kept you attached, but you're not that child anymore. And the very strategies that once saved you are now the prison keeping you stuck. So when people say, why am I still anxious? Why do I keep attracting the same relationships? Why do I burn out no matter how much inner work I do? The answer is not that they're broken. The answer is that they're still using childhood survival tools to try and build an adult life. But a life built on self-abandonment cannot lead to wholeness. The nervous system doesn't heal through control. It heals through safety. It heals when the adult steps in and says, no more. No more shrinking to be loved. No more pretending to be fine. No more saying yes and when everything inside is screaming no. No more treating my healing like a race or a punishment. Because healing isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming honest. Brutally, radically, lovingly honest. About what you feel. About what you need. About what you will no longer tolerate. And that honesty, that return to yourself, is the medicine your inner child has been waiting for your entire life. Not another guided meditation, not another journal prompt, not another affirmation layered over a foundation of self-rejection, but you, your presence, your protection, your boundaries, your truth. That is what turns survival into healing. That is how the cycle ends. And in the next part, we're going to dive even deeper, because now that you understand the mistake, it's time to learn the shift. The shift that rewires everything. The shift that turns your nervous system from survival into safety, from self-abandonment into self-leadership, from coping into actually living. Breathe, because it gets real, right now. There's a moment, a very specific moment, in every healing journey you see when something clicks, not in the mind, not in the intellect, but deep in the body, in the nervous system, where survival patterns have been running the show for years, maybe decades. And that moment is this: I don't have to be who I became to survive. Let that sink in, because every survival pattern, the people-pleasing, the perfectionism, the overthinking, the hyper-independence, didn't come from who you are. It came from who you had to become. But here's the truth no one told you growing up. The nervous system doesn't heal by being told, you're safe. It heals when it feels safe. And the difference between those two things is everything. See, most people try to heal by thinking their way out of pain, reading, listening, learning, consuming more and more knowledge. believing that understanding the wound is the same as healing it. It's not. Understanding is the door, but safety is what lets you walk through it. Carl Jung called this the process of integration, bringing back the parts of yourself that were exiled in order to survive, not fixing them, not silencing them, not labeling them as broken, but welcoming them back. So how do you create that shift? It starts with one simple, radical decision. I will no longer abandon myself, not when someone's disappointed, not when someone is angry, not when someone withdraws their love, not when the world demands you shrink, hustle, prove, or perform. No more, because every time you choose yourself in small ways, your nervous system learns a new language. I am safe now. I can belong without betraying myself. I can be loved without performing. And this isn't theory. This is biology. When you were a child, every time you sensed danger, a withdrawn parent, a critical tone, a slammed door, an unmet need, your nervous system activated survival mode. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. It wasn't a choice. It was a brilliant automatic response. But here's the problem. The body doesn't track time. So unless something interrupts that loop, the body keeps reacting, as if it's still happening. This is why triggers feel so overwhelming. This is why simple disappointments feel like abandonment. This is why boundaries feel terrifying. Because the body remembers that setting a boundary once cost you love, but now you get to become the one who rewrites that story. And here's how it begins. When discomfort rises, the guilt, the shame, the anxiety, you pause, you breathe, you put a hand on your heart, and you say, I see you. I'm not leaving you. You are safe now. Every time you do this, a crack forms in the wall that trauma built. Every time you honor a boundary, a fracture appears in the old belief that love must be earned. Every time you let yourself rest, say no, or express a need, you loosen the grip of a nervous system that was conditioned to believe, I must disappear to survive. This is how you shift. Not by becoming untriggered, not by becoming perfect, but by becoming present. Present enough to hold the fear without abandoning yourself. Present enough to hold the sadness without shaming it. Present enough to hold the anger without suppressing it. And every time you do, your nervous system rewires. It stops organizing itself around the question, how do I stay safe by being less? And starts organizing itself around the truth, I am allowed to exist fully, completely, authentically. This is the shift that changes everything. The shift from coping to living, from surviving to thriving, from exile to homecoming. And yes, it's slow, yes, it's uncomfortable, yes, it will bring up grief. Grief for all the years you spent betraying yourself because no one ever showed you another way. But that grief is sacred. It means you are finally safe enough to feel what you once had to suppress just to survive. And what comes after that? Peace. Not because life gets perfect, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. This is the nervous system repair Jung spoke of, not in those exact words, but in every teaching about shadow work, individuation, and the return to wholeness. You stop fixing, you stop performing, and you start remembering. I was never broken. I was protecting myself. And now, I get to live. In the next part, we go even deeper, because now that you understand the shift, it's time to learn the skills, the tools, the boundaries, the daily practices that turn healing from a concept into a lifestyle. Get ready. This is the part where everything transforms. You know the truth now. You know why your nervous system reacts the way it does. You know why you became who you had to become just to survive. But the question now is simple. How do you turn this awareness into change? How do you move from simply knowing to actually living as your true self? The answer is boundaries. Not boundaries as a punishment, not boundaries as walls to push others away, but boundaries as medicine. Because here's the truth nobody told you. A nervous system that never had boundaries doesn't know how to feel safe. A life without boundaries is a life where your body is in constant defense mode, Because every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you tolerate what hurts you, every time you silence your truth to avoid disappointing others, your nervous system receives the same message. I am not safe to be me. This is where the exhaustion comes from. This is where the anxiety lives. This is why burnout doesn't get fixed with vacations or bubble baths, because the real burnout isn't from doing too much. It's from being too much for everyone else and not enough for yourself. So let's make this practical. Healing starts with one small, radical question. What is true for me right now? Not what's expected, not what's polite, not what keeps the peace, but what's true. When you feel that no rising in your body, that tightening in your chest, that sinking in your stomach, that is not weakness. It's your nervous system whispering, this is a boundary. And when you honor it, something changes. A new signal gets sent through your entire body. I am safe now, because I have me. And this is the beginning of everything. Every boundary you set, with others, with yourself, with the old stories, becomes a brick in the foundation of safety. Safety creates regulation. Regulation creates clarity. Clarity creates space for joy, creativity, connection, and life. This is not about cutting people out. It's not about living with your fists up, ready to fight. It's about learning how to stay connected to yourself, even when others don't approve, even when others misunderstand. Because the version of you who once believed, I must abandon myself to be loved, was never the real you. It was the wounded you, the protected you, the surviving you. But the true you, the one who existed before the conditioning, before the betrayal, before the pressure to be who you are not, has always been waiting for one simple thing, for you to come home. And home is built with boundaries, with rest, with softness toward yourself, with the audacity to say, I am no longer willing to betray myself for love that requires me to disappear. Let that be the declaration, not just for today, not just for this video, but for the rest of your life. This is the individuation Carl Jung spoke of, the sacred return to self, the process of peeling away the masks, the roles, the survival patterns, until all that's left is truth. And no, it's not easy. There will be grief. There will be fear. There will be discomfort when the people who benefited from your self-abandonment realize you're no longer available for it. But beyond that discomfort is freedom. And freedom is what your nervous system was always designed for. Not survival, not chronic vigilance, not walking on eggshells. Freedom. So what now? It starts simple. Ask yourself, today, right now, where am I abandoning myself? Is it in a relationship? In a job? In the way you ignore your body's need for rest, for space, for joy? And then ask, what would it look like to choose myself here? Not in a way that hurts others, but in a way that finally stops hurting you. This is the path. The healing is not in becoming perfect. It's in becoming present. Present enough to hear your own truth. Present enough to honor it. Present enough to remember that your worth was never, ever supposed to be earned. You were born worthy. You were born enough. And the only thing that's ever been broken was the lie that told you otherwise. So today, let this be the moment everything shifts. The moment your nervous system learns a new story. I am safe now. I am home now. I am whole now. And if this resonates with you, if this feels like truth inside your bones, know this. You don't have to walk this path alone. There's a link below, a guide I created to help you navigate this journey. A step-by-step blueprint to healing your inner child, breaking generational trauma, and building a life that feels like home, inside your own body. You'll find it in the description, but whether you download it or not, promise yourself this: I will no longer abandon myself. That is the real work. And if you're ready to go deeper, subscribe, because here, we don't just talk about healing, we live it together.